T. Liggins, Hurdle Life Coach, here for another live recap and discussion about the For Life video series. It has been a T. Liggins, Hurdle Life Coach, here live for another recap and discussion of the For Life episode series. We are in week 12 of the program. I was confident that this was a 12-week program, and I was about to do a season finale, a wrap up. And come to find out, we are not there yet. Not quite to the finale. We got one more week of this program, of this series, to really see how things unfold. And today, and even the last 3 weeks, it's just really been the drama, the more dramatic. The drama has really showed up and entertained us to give us a look inside of what it is to be incarcerated. What is it like on the inside of a prison? What are the different dynamics? What comes into play in that ecosystem that is incarceration? So much, many opportunities for reform, for change, for conversations as we explore criminal justice reform. I've said this before, I'll say it again for the sake of just educating and continuing to provide that education. When we're looking at reform, we're looking at law enforcement, courts, and correction. Law enforcement, courts, and correction. And correction is a very much a part of the system. And for me, actually, the most intimidating part of the system. The system that is in place inside of the correctional facilities is so hard to rewire, so challenging to do different things because of the mindset that is set forth in what is the purpose of a correctional institution, what is the purpose of a prison, what is the purpose of jail. Is it to confine, control, and contain, or is there a greater responsibility or opportunity that is there? Is it the role of our prisons and our jails to provide rehabilitation services? Is it the role of our prison and jails to provide education services? Is it the role of our prisons and jails to ensure that there is healthy interaction between the individual who's incarcerated and their loved ones out in the community? Is that the role of our prisons and our jails? That's a question we are asking ourselves now today, and we will continue to ask ourselves as we look into the state of our system and whether or not it's working. Is it working as it's designed? The unfortunate thing about the system is, based on how it's designed, it's actually doing as it was designed. This is where our opportunity comes into place in offering a redesign, offering a alternative to the traditional ways in which we've been going about engaging our system. The system was originally created, based in fear, wanting to again move to try to reintegrate this involuntary servitude back into our country. We've come so far since when our system was established, and we don't think the same, we don't look the same, we don't believe the same, but we got this archaic system that we are still operating in, that needs some change, that needs some reform. So this series has been doing a fantastic job of spotlighting some of those areas where we can have conversations about reform, law enforcement, courts, and corrections. So again, back into the corrections, back into this episode, because I can find myself going off in a broader conversation around reform, and I'm going to do some of that. But I do want to talk about today's episode, some of the things we've seen, some of the research I've done between the last time we we met here on the live and today. Also, I found myself really drawn to and wanting to know the real story about Isaac Wright Jr., which is who the story is inspired by. So I'm actually going to share some tidbits of truth around his actual story to clear up any discrepancies that may have been communicated because of we're basing this dialogue off of the dramatic series, and we know that there is a space for what is called suspension of disbelief, or what is called just TV. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some truths that I've discovered and to clear up any discrepancies that I may have mentioned prior to this in regards to some of that. But this week, the episode was, again, showing us what it's like on the inside. Remember last week's episode, there was a big prison riot. Everything with the tension was thick. There's been a lot of chaos and drama and manipulation and control really surrounding the individual Cassius Dawkins, who was transferred there, who is Curtis 50 Cent Jackson. So his character was planted there. Actually, as you can see in the end of the episode, the warden Sonia Majory was able to find the evidence necessary to actually prove that there's politics at play, that there's politics at play in our prisons. Now, this is scary. Yes, also very uncomfortable, discerning. That the fact that people are playing politics with people's lives. That we as a community are looking at individuals in our jails and prisons as just a political maneuver instead of actual people. We come to find out through this episode that the prison board has a lot of power and authority and control, and that they are able to leverage that influence to do certain things. And what was found out is that one of the prison board members actually was, supporting or working with that the state's attorney Maskins, if you will, and orchestrated the transfer of Dawkins. Not good playing politics. The current warden found that out, and you can see how just playing politics has turned into ultimately a riot has broken out. 4 people are dead. So many people are injured. And so that takes us kind of back to where we were at the top of the episode. I really want to get into some of the things that have inspired me today from the warden, but let's talk a little bit about the riot that broke out. So as I was watching it from the top, some of the things, one of the things the warden said right away, she says 14 minutes of violence will wipe out 8 months of progress. And I really empathize with her in that as a change agent and as a person who believes in change, knows it's constant, practicing the responsible use of influence, looking to gain more and more influence and credibility, that a person could progress. Progress is the name of the game, not perfection, progress. And progress takes time. So she's here talking about 8 months of progress that she's put into some of her reform measures and how that can be wiped out in 14 minutes of violence. I just empathized right away and felt like, wow, I know what that would feel like, because making progress and having momentum, that's what it's about. And to have it potentially wiped away in a single swoop, here's the test. And she talked about that. She talked about if she folds now or if she gives in now, all of her reform measures would be lost. And I really want to talk about some of the things she did that I liked. But she I have quoted, she talked about a powerful idea pushed with courage and conviction. A powerful idea pushed with courage and conviction could overcome apathy and the inertia of all the history of what has already occurred in this system. So conviction and courage, she inspires me today to access that for myself as I push through what is reforming our system and changing the ways we're thinking about incarceration. She says she fears that her ideas and her ideals would be buried. This is what we are, I'm hoping to inspire. This is what we are, I'm hoping to evoke, that we would collectively come up with ideas and ideals that we can table with the system influencers here in our state, here in our region, here across our nation. There's a lot of reform. There's a lot of conversations happening around reform across the nation. A lot of different advocates and champions out there who really care about this, as they should, and as we should, as you should. Just because an individual has committed a crime doesn't mean that they are not worth an investment of our time and our resources. I mean, 97% of individuals that are incarcerated are going to come home anyway, come back to the community. Let's invest in them while they are in a controlled and confined setting, to prepare them for a adequate release, that they would succeed upon their release. But what are the ideas? What is the ideal situation? What does the ideal situation look like for an individual who is served their time and now they're releasing? What does the ideal situation look like for individuals in incarceration while they're confined? What is that? These are the things that we need to talk about and suggest for the system players in our region, in our state, in our community. One of the things I found interesting, I just looked into it right away. She, at the top of the episode, she says, initiate the CERT team. And in the system and bureaucracy, people speak in acronyms often. And if you don't know the culture, then you don't know the language. And so CERT, what does that mean? That actually means Community Emergency Response Team. And CERT is really an umbrella term that can incorporate a few different emergency response teams depending on the conditions. It can depending on the location. You know, it could be disaster relief like FEMA. It may be crisis control, incident control like it was in that prison. But CERT, I just thought maybe that'd be an interesting tidbit fact to share, that it stands for Community Engagement Response Team. And actually the motto for CERT, and these CERT teams are pulled together, and they exist all across many not sectors, but many all across the country in different systems and different organizations. The motto of CERT is doing the greatest good for the greatest number of people. I like that. I feel call to action to that. I want to adopt that. I think we should create our own CERT team here at Hurdle Life, our own community emergency response team. And we can. I talked about a couple weeks ago, who's with me? Who's joining? Somebody tell me they're in. Because we do have a state of emergency. We have a state of emergency right now, not only literally in regards to the state of our state in regards to how we're managing our COVID-19, but literally it is an emergency. It is in a state of emergency. What has been going on in the system has been going on in the system far too long. And it is an emergency that we rise, that we coalesce, that we congregate, that we come together, that we have conversations, that we engage each other with an open mind, with compassion, with empathy, with hope, and that we advocate for change. That's exactly what we are doing here at Hurdle Life, advocating for change. There's a program we're developing right now. We're birthing, we're carrying. It's going to birth into the community. It's called change. It's called change. That's exactly what we're here to do. Challenge historically accepted notions for greater expectations. This is what we're here to do. So to do the greatest good for the greatest number of people, that's what a CERT team does. So I'm looking to develop a CERT team here within Hurdle Life. I know originally I've talked about building a Hurdle Life community as well. I'm going to develop a Hurdle Life CERT team as well. I'm inspired and excited about that. Got a comment. This was such a powerful episode in terms of giving us an ideal example of a change agent. Exactly. Certainly. It was never about her as an individual. When she had to choose between her job and her reforms, she chose reforms and passed the baton. Absolutely. Thank you for that comment, Cassie. I wrote that down as well at the end there. And especially in my background as a track athlete, I so appreciate a good relay team, a passing of the baton. And I was so inspired by Sonia Masri today and the spirit that she carried and how she did stand up to her attorney general, that she did know that the old traditional ways of trying to do things would come up in her face, and she would be faced with the challenge of standing or folding. And I know that I will be faced with those same type of opportunities, and I was so impressed with the way she stood. But then it's just a big hill, it's a big battle, it's a big mountain. Ultimately, she was swooped out of there, and another person came in and started to undo what she had done. But another thing she had said in the episode is that if you're attacking a problem that you can solve within your lifetime, then you're thinking too small. And holy buckets, does that remind me of some of the work that I'm doing as a coordinator of this coalition called Smart Justice Council here in Sioux Falls, here in South Dakota. And my coordinator, a friend of mine, told me, she said, Terry, this work that we're embarking on together, it may not be completed within our lifetime. And it's so humbling to hear that and challenging. But it reminds me of the size of the problem and the fact that each and every day matters. Each and every day matters on whether or not I'm putting an honest effort towards education and reform. Because the goal that I see, the goals that I have for the system, the goals that Hurdle Life has for the system, the ideals and ideas that we would like to see birthed may not come to fruition within my lifetime. So I think I'm in the right boat doing the right thing. And each and every day I'm going to continue to have an honest effort and an honest push towards positive transformation of our system. I appreciate that reminder. I appreciate that reminder that we're in it for the long haul, for the endurance of the matter, that it's not a sprint but a marathon, and that it takes a team, and that when she says, I think she says, when your turn at trying is over, pass the baton. That's exactly what she said. So I know the baton is in our hand, my hand now, and in our hands now here at Hurdle Life, and we're running with it, and we're going to continue to run with it. But so inspiring. Some of the reform measures that we had actually had a chance to look into and see from this episode is she actually had a drug treatment program going on inside there. And we were so caught up in whether or not Aaron was going to be able to get to court, and whether or not Jamal has survived, and whether what was happening with the captain, that we were so caught up in the drama of the individual characters that we didn't see much of her reform efforts outside of she did bring the weights back, but that ended up obviously being, I talked about some of that before, but weights, and she brought the glasses down, but she looks like she also implemented a drug treatment program where she had individuals who were housed in that unit, which was, what do they call that? Open floor style housing, where you have multiple beds in there, kind of a shared living space, different than the traditional general population where people are confined in one cell. There was an openness, there was a more room, the environment was completely different, and people were absorbing information about recovery, information about addiction, information about attitudes, choices, behaviors, character. And after the completion of the 30-day program, those individuals transitioned into a transitional unit. It didn't say for how long, and then back to general population. And I would imagine that the idea and the ideal is after that 30-day intensive part of the program, then the transitional housing, then back in the general population, you got a different type of person and different perspective. And we can continue to build on that. So that's just one example of like education-based programming, drug treatment. We have the opportunity within our correctional facilities to provide a plethora of different education opportunities. Yes, we currently do things like GED programming and some other drug treatment programming, art-based therapy, spirituality, meditation. There's some good efforts at different types of education, but there's more that we can do. We can provide higher education. We can actually provide college opportunities. We can talk to individuals about entrepreneurship and business. We can talk to help people develop actual communication skills to be able to articulate that in which is real and true inside themselves, but also how to articulate and market and sell for other people. We can help develop people while they're away, not just to be laborers, but to be leaders. So we have an opportunity for that. But she showed us that inside of a prison, you can have these different types of environments. I know for me, when I did my time, I was in a isolated unit, therapeutic community for 13 and a half of the 14 months that I was away. And it made the hugest difference in how I released in my mindset coming back to community. So we certainly can see the benefits and the opportunity in providing therapeutic community, isolated communities, peer-based, peer-ran communities in custody and in community. I've got some ideas around bringing some of those things to Sioux Falls. I would love to get more help championing that idea. So fired up, I just really want to talk about reform. I'm having a tough time staying in the weeds of the episode because really the episode is just a medium. The series was just a medium for us to talk about and use it as a springboard to say, what do we want to do? What type of things do we want to accomplish for Her to Life here in the state of South Dakota and the region? But in the program, though, I mean, in the episode, we did see the breakdown of the captain and how the walls closed in on him, and he was pressed to the point where he says, I don't think I should say anything else. I have nothing more to say. He was to the place where he knew he was going to incriminate himself if he spoke. And it was sad to see it happen and see it crumbling, but it was just, and it was due the accountability that came to him. He earned that accountability and that arrest. And that is justice. It's fair. Justice is fair. Right now, what we see in our system is not often a justice that is fair. We often see a justice that discriminates against certain types of people, cultures, individuals, and we want to see that change. And now we don't want to see more people involved in the system, or we just want to see a fair and just system. And if a correctional officer engages in misconduct or illegal activity, absolutely he should not be above accountability to the same laws and rules that he enforces or she enforces. So we saw that accountability come to him, and we saw what happens and how people feel different type of ways about that. His partner was really nervous that obviously, it might come down on him. After that, the other guard, you can see the warden was, I'm going to throw the book at you. I thought one of the things that was really hard for me to see is how his father responded to him. And he says, I know you don't like me, and you may not think I'm a good dad, but one thing I have is my name, and you just took that from me. I really thought that was sad to see that exchange, and it really speaks to the unhealthy nature of some relationships that people have with their parents, and how there's so much opportunity for us to talk about what healing looks like what good, healthy relationships look like. And that wasn't an example of that. But at the same time, it did shine a light on the importance of legacy. And are we living for legacy? And do we care about our legacy? And do we want to carry forth a a character, reputation that honors our family? So I don't think the father was wrong in wanting to have a strong legacy, but if your legacy sacrifices, your actual interaction with your loved ones, your children, and you're not a good person, then that's not what we want to be living out. I know for me, this COVID-19 has really given me such a blessed opportunity to spend quality time with my loved ones, with my tribe. And I've been so grateful for that, because I know I can get busy. I know I can be all wrapped up in my legacy that I made, that I forget what really matters, which is quality time. So that example of the brokenness between father and son, but the importance of legacy, I thought that was interesting to see that dynamic show itself. Ultimately, the captain commits suicide. His union reps were not going to support him. He's like, after 32 years, nothing. Obviously, his father not really supporting him there, and he commits suicide. I want to let a little cat out the bag about the reality of Isaac Wright Jr. and his case. We're gonna see what happens next week, but it's become clear to me through my research, and I just want to go ahead and share this while it's hot, and just go ahead and clear it now. They've condensed the actual time span of how all these things actually happened and when they actually happened. One of the things that was always confusing for me is how a person can be actually incarcerated and get this permission and approval to go from court to corrections, from court to corrections. It was very odd. There was always only 2 people on the bus. That's a distorted reality. Let the cat out the bag. I thought it was the real deal for all these weeks. I'm like, man, Isaac Wright, he pulled off some amazing stuff to be able to get that level of resources to accommodate his pursuit for justice. Well, the reality is Isaac Wright was certainly a prison rep while in prison, and helped other incarcerated people deal with the internal criminal justice system. The internal system of accountability. Pardon me. We're not saying criminal anymore. We understand that word doesn't assist us in community justice. He was a prison rep for his time while he was in prison, and he did some work to ultimately get his life conviction overturned. And then when he got his life conviction overturned, he actually still had another slew of other things he was convicted of that still kept him incarcerated, but ultimately got out, then went to law school, finished law school. There's a whole timeline on this thing. I don't want to get too far out into away from the episode and some of what we're talking about, but in the reality of Isaac Wright Jr.'s story, he ends up cross-examining a police officer who, and I wrote his name down. He ends up cross-examining police officer James Dugan, who ultimately confesses to police misconduct and points at the district attorney, whose actual name is Nicholas Bissell. Nicholas Bissell is being reflected by Glenn Maskins in this drama. When everything hit the fan, and then Nicholas Bissell was ultimately indicted and charged. So imagine Glenn Maskins actually being indicted and charged, and we'll see what happens next week. when they reflect Aaron's courtroom reality of what happened truly after he got out of prison. The dude Nicholas Bissell gets indicted, gets put on house arrest, gets convicted, and then was going to be sentenced. And like 2 days before he was scheduled to be sentenced, he fled, went to Las Vegas to a hotel. They demanded he come out. He didn't come out. He killed himself in the hotel. So what they've done, what this ABC series has done, is kind of embodied the reality of what ultimately happened to Glenn Maskins once all the stuff hits the fan and he's held accountable for his own misconduct and criminal activity and commit suicide. But in this case, in the drama, they've shown it to be the captain who actually committed suicide. So an interesting kind of twist play on reality and ABC's effort to condense everything and include different parts of Isaac Wright Jr.'s story, which to make it a resemblance of the truth. Not sure if you followed me on all that, but I just, now that I see it more clearly, now that I know more about Isaac Wright Jr.'s actual case and some of the things that are for TV and some of the things that was his real life, it's just interesting to see. But it doesn't take away from the fact that this is a real reality. People are actually innocently convicted. Even this past weekend, I read about an individual who was released after 39 years. He was sentenced to prison in 1975 and just got released out of Ohio after 39 years, suing the state, gonna get some money, but 39 years. So there has been a history of corruption and police misconduct and things that we have the opportunity now to make right if we can. But sad to see everything, the walls close in on the captain and see him commit suicide. One of the things I caught too, as the man of faith who came into Sonia Masri's office to say, the true word is Jamal was supposed to kill Aaron because Aaron was being perceived as a rat. And that's why Foster let him in. Because if Aaron was gone or out, then he would get off the hook and some different things. But what I wrote down about that is that man of faith practiced in that moment honesty and integrity. And he had peace in that. And that was really inspiring. And he said something to the warden. He says, "Hope to see you again." And essentially what he was saying with that, y'all, was that he was willing to say that on record, what he just told her. But you might not catch that if you didn't read in between the lines. But what I found inspiring about that is that the man of faith practicing honesty and integrity. And I think that's so important and impressive and inspiring that we practice honesty and integrity. So just going to wrap up here. I know I'm a little over 30 minutes now, so I'm going to wrap on up, look at my notes to see if there's anything else that I missed here. Well, I did write down something. There's two other things I wrote down. I'll talk about how the warden, again, very much inspired me today. She talked about justice and light emerging out through the darkness. This is what our efforts are at Herd of Life, is to be a light, a shining light, a rising voice, an emerging energy effort, initiatives to bring light and justice to the community in which we live, which I live, in the region. When Sonia Masri showed that prison board member that she had the evidence that could show that he was corrupt. He goes, oh, blackmail? She goes, quid pro quo, something for something. But I was reminded on how, again, right there in that language, in our culture, we've got wired into it. Culture and language that insinuates and assumes the black male to be dangerous, wrong, and violent. It is not easy being a black male in America. It's not easy being African American. It's not easy being a person of color in America because of the oppression, because of the history, because of the traditional ideals. There's some disturbing things happen when it comes to racial disparities and inequality. There's something that comes to my mind right now where I'm thinking about in the last couple of weeks, last month, that there was a demonstration at a state capitol in our country where people ascended onto the state capitol with weapons. And while they exercised their freedom of speech and expression and right to bear arms, they were treated with respect and dignity by and large, and even referred to as good, decent people by our commander in chief. Yet, we can have an African American male who kneels, peacefully protests police brutality, and is called all type of other names and treated completely different. One's a black male, the other one is not. And there's just a different type of attitude we have when it comes to black male. And unless you know the history or you're truly paying attention, you miss some of these microaggressions that are wired into our fabric. Even something as degrading as the term black male. Ever thought about where it came from? There's a lot of other things out there like that that's in the fabric that just assumes that people of dark complexion are dangerous and no good. And I'm doing all I can to challenge that historically accepted notion for greater expectation here at Hurdle Life Coach. So one more week of this. We'll see the season finale. Hopefully I didn't eliminate too much of the suspense from talking a little bit about the truth of Isaac Wright Jr. Do some research on him. He's doing some amazing things now, still in New Jersey. He is out of prison. So very inspiring story. But all in all, these last few weeks have just shown us what's going on inside the prison ecosystem and what it's like to truly be a person who's incarcerated, that you're living day by day, that you never know what tomorrow's going to bring, that just in the blink of an eye, violence could just truly break out and your life is on the line. And it's hard and it's dangerous and it's challenging, but we as a community can prepare ourselves to be the hospitable, good people of moral character that we are, and implement a community justice that receives people upon their release with empathy, with understanding, with resources to set them up for successful reintegration. That's my desire. That's our desire here at Hurdle Life. So I'm over. I'm excited. I thought this was the last week. Is not. Those who have joined, I appreciate you being here. Appreciate the comments. Appreciate those who have been coming each and every week. We'll do it one more week next week, and then we're going to continue to do things like this. I am committed to continue to engage the Hurdle Life community, social media, World Wide Web with some type of education, programming weekly from the Hurdle Life Coach. I've got some ideas of what the next iteration of our online education program will look like after the season finale, and I'm excited to already start to plan out some of those things with my team that we can keep having this conversation. So invite people to follow the page, come back, check out the archive, share the videos. Greatly appreciate those who are here now still, those who continue to come, and I look forward to next week and seeing how this thing ends. Thank you. Hurdle Life.